Recording is started, and we'll go ahead and get started here. Okay, so welcome to this webinar on building reports in Easy Insight. We're going to go through the basics of building reports. We're going to go through a variety of the report types that are available to you, how you set those reports up, what some of the configuration options are for customizing those reports, and anything else we can kind of work through around report editing. So once you have your data in Easy Insight, you should be able to do create and create report. This is the report editor, which I'm guessing most of you are at least somewhat familiar with. You start off with a list report. If we go ahead and do choose field, we'll see the different columns, different tables, different fields that we have available to us. So if we open up the sales folder in this case, we do current stage is added to the report. We do choose field again, we grab sales rep is added to the report. We choose deal size, and deal size is added to the report. So when you add, as far as field types go here, current stage is what we refer to as a grouping. A grouping is a text field that you want to group data by. So current stage, deal author, deal status, deal title, those are examples of groupings. Deal size is a measure. A measure is a number that can be aggregated together in some way. It can be summed up, it can be averaged, something along those lines. And then dates are pretty self-explanatory, those are dates. When you add a measure to a report like this, it's automatically aggregated together for the different groupings on that given row. So in this case, we're seeing that deal size of $28,000, that's a sum of the deal sizes for all deals that are won and belonging to Lisa. If you do edit this field from the drop-down here, you have various options around customizing the field in the report. You can see that the field type allows you to change. So if somehow the field is showing as a grouping and you need to change it to a measure, you can do that here. The aggregation is telling you how the data is being combined together. So in this case, we're summing up the deal size. Formatting is how the value is displayed. So right now it's being shown as a currency. But if we wanted to just be a raw number, a percentage, different units of measure like that, the formatting allows you to configure that. Maximum and minimum decimal points. So if we put in 2 as the maximum minimum, and then we scroll down and click save, you'll see that we now see those 2 decimal points shown with the dollar figure. With the list report, you can click on the column headers to sort. And if you then shift click on a second column, it'll do a secondary sort on that column. In answer to that question around what exactly is a measure? A measure is, it's a metric, it's a number that you can sum together, you can average together. So an example here of where that would be as opposed to opportunity ID. Opportunity ID is also a number, but it's not a measure. You can't sum together ID values. You can't average them together. They're really just something you group the data by. Whereas deal size can be summed, it can be averaged, you can take the max of it, you can take the min, things like that. Okay. Let's see, what else can you do with a list report? Let's see. So once you have a list report, if you do quick actions, add a summary row, that will add a summary row to the bottom of the list report showing the sum, average, whatever the aggregation is of all measures in the report. If you click on Configuration and go to Report Properties and then to Formatting, this is where there's a wide range of different options to help you customize your reports. The set of options here is going to vary based on the report type you're in. So for the list report, you can see that summary row is turned on. If we turn on lock headers and save, and being a demo, we are being a live demo, we are having something being slow. Okay, so now we are seeing, so you now see our header is locked. So as we scroll, the header stays in place for the list report. If we go ahead and add several more fields, so it's not quite crazy, but let's say we want to make it so that we're able to do some horizontal scrolling because the number of columns is increasing and increasing. If we go back to formatting, there is a value here that is minimum column width. If we set a value of 200 pixels per column and do save, then the report enables us to scroll horizontally, which can really help if you, especially once you get up into the 15, 20 type column range. Go ahead and create a fresh report here. What else can we do with list reports? Go ahead and kind of recreate here. If you click on the green field dropdown and go back to edit this field, then go to text formatting, you'll see some additional options specific to this field and to this report type. If we change the alignment, we could change it to centering so that it's displayed centered as opposed to the left. What we can also do is set up nested headers. So we could say grouping, grouping, and measure. So there we're getting some merged cells to show some additional detail around the list report. We can also customize the coloring on a specific header. So for example, we could say we want to show this one in red. And now our measure and deal size is shown with a red column, which can help make certain columns pop more visually in your report. So to answer a question there around the summary row for deal size, it's going to be aggregated based on whatever the aggregation is for that field. So in the example we did, it was summed up because that's what the aggregation was set to. If the aggregation is set to average, then it's going to aggregate together the different deals. It's going to average together the different deal sizes and show that on the summary row. Some of the other options for list report formatting, we can choose to stripe the rows. Again, just kind of helps provide some better visual contrast between the different rows. We can turn off the grid lines altogether. And there are more options beyond that, but hopefully that kind of gives you an idea as far as how you can customize list reports. Next, let's jump over into crosstabs. So to change the report type, first click on the button that defaults to showing as list. Here you're seeing the different report types that are available to you in Easy Insight. We'll go ahead and do a crosstab. So for a crosstab, we'll choose sales rep, current stage, and deal size. So as you can see here, our sales reps are going down each row, and our stages are going across the different columns. The values are shown for the intersections of those. So the lost amount for Amy, the created amount for Mark, so on. So different things you can customize with so this applies to anything actually, but it'll be useful in this case. So let's say we want to customize the sort order for current stage. Right now we're seeing it's just doing an alphabetical sort. We can click on current stage, do edit this field, go to customize sort order, and do retrieve values for sort order. We can then drag our stages to match up with the way that they actually should be in terms of the sequential pipeline. We click save, and now the values are shown in that order as opposed to just being alphanumeric. If you do quick actions, color crosstab cells, it applies some additional styling to the crosstab based on with the highest values getting the darkest shading. Let's see, we can also you can turn off the row summaries and the column summaries. You can do the same thing with minimum column width as you could on a list report. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to tree reports. So we'll go ahead and choose tree as our type. So for the tree report, we have to define a hierarchy, some sort of path of roll up and drill down. So in this case, what we're going to do is start with deal status, then choose current stage, and we'll go ahead and choose our friend deal size again. We see a level for each deal status. Then as we open it, we see the different stages with the sums of the deal size at the deal status level, at the all level, at the deal status level, and at the individual stage level. Let's see. If we add in if we add in the actual deal title, then, well, in this case, our deal titles aren't anything too exciting, but we're able to see the individual deals that are broken out per stage. This is a CRM example, but you could certainly have plenty of other examples. If you're using Easy Insight for project management, it could be project, task list, task. If you're using Easy Insight for support, it might be support group, ticket priority, the individual ticket. If you're using it for financial, it might be line of business, account name, transaction. Let's see. As far as some of the options here, we have the same things around striping rows. You can hide the all level. You can customize the row colors. If we change it to a summary report, then what it shows is everything automatically expanded. So there's no expand collapse in this case. Otherwise, the report types are pretty much the same. It really is just a matter of whether you want the expand collapse to be there or not. As I said, feel free to jump in with any other questions as I'm going through any of these report types. Okay, we will move on to charts. So we're going to go ahead and choose column as our report type. So let's go ahead and do date created and deal size. So by default, when you add a date field to a chart, it'll go ahead and set that date to a month, year level of aggregation. So we're seeing data for April 2018, July 2018, March 2019, so on. If you click on the green date created, you'll see a set of default date level options here. So we have year, quarter year, week year, day, month, year. So if we change it to quarter year, the date is rolled up at that quarter level. There are quite a few different options for customizing column charts. If we go ahead and do change to multiple groupings with this customize link here, we could go ahead and choose sales rep, choose deal size again. Then for each quarter, we're seeing an individual bar per sales rep. We can also have one amount and lost amount. So now we're seeing two different measures on the chart together. So one bar for the one amount per quarter, one bar for the lost amount per quarter. This could easily be, again, to provide some context for project management, it could be on-time tasks versus late tasks. For support, it could be tickets created versus tickets solved. What else can we do here? So if we go ahead and go back to report properties, formatting, you can customize the sort order on the column chart. By default, it's showing as x-axis ascending. If we change that to y-axis ascending and go down and save, then the report shows from the lowest values, so starting at Q2 2017 with $0, up to Q3 2018 at $33,000. You can also set the report to display as cumulative. If we toggle the cumulative setting, scroll down and click Save, then it adds up the values so you're able to get a cumulative chart as opposed to showing the data per month. Okay. All right, so then, let's see. To answer a question we just got, the question is, how do we customize the format of the date as shown? So if we do edit this field, you'll see that there's a custom output format here on the date. So, and I believe we provide, if you mouse over the question icon, it gives you an idea of some of the different formatting options you can use. So if I do MMMYY, then it shows as Feb 18 as an alternative date format. Quickly rebuild our report again here. Okay, what else can we do? So let's say we have deal size, but we also want to show the number of opportunities. Now, when we initially add opportunity count, the report is pretty much unusable for that, because for Q3 2018, we had $41,000 of deal size and 12 opportunities. The scale there is just so different, it's pretty much impossible to see the opportunity count. If we go to configuration, report properties, and formatting again, and we enable 2-axis as a setting and save, then we get a second axis shown on the right side of the chart, enabling us to accurately see opportunity count as opposed to it just basically being invisible. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and jump over to a bar chart. In general, bar charts are going to be pretty similar to column charts. The data is just shown, the bars are going horizontally as opposed to vertically. The couple things I'll point out here. One is with a bar chart, it defaults to displaying the data, to calculating the size of the chart dynamically. So in this case, it's the bars are kind of small, but if we go ahead and change it over to show deal title, we're able to scroll vertically because of the sheer amount of data being shown in the chart. So if we change this back to sales rep, well, let's say we do want to make it show with wider bars, or what we can do is go to formatting again. And if we turn off variable height, then it shows the bars as being higher. To answer a couple of questions there. So for adding a trend line, where that's really going to come, kind of what you'll need to do for that if you're doing a column chart is to use the column line report type. One other setting that can be useful, especially on a bar chart here, it's not really relevant in this case because the names are so short, but there is an option which is don't truncate headers. If you have long enough values in your data, then sometimes it'll have to truncate those values in order to show the chart. But you may still want to see those full names. If so, you'll want to turn this setting on. Just something that people do run into. Stack charts, again, are going to be pretty similar. So the only thing there is basically you're stacking the chart so you can see multiple combinations of groupings. So in this case, the combination of stage, deal value per stage for each sales rep. Stacked bar is going to be the same thing, just shown the other direction. Okay. Pie charts. Nothing super exciting here, but if we do configuration, report properties, and formatting, one thing you may or may not be aware of, you can change the pie chart into a donut chart. So for example, if we add a ratio of 0.5, then it's shown as a donut chart as opposed to a pie chart. To answer one question, there's a question, can you connect to multiple Excel spreadsheets? We're not really going to cover that in this webinar, but the answer is yes, you can. Feel free to reach out to me after and we can definitely go over that. And we'll be covering data integration in more detail in a future webinar as well. Line charts. So for a line chart, you'll need to choose a date field as your x-axis. So if we do date created, sales rep, and deal size, we see a chart, in this case, with the value per month. We can change that over to quarter year again, and we see the line there. So some of the options for customizing the formatting of a line chart. We'll go back to formatting. If we go ahead and change the line segment to curved, we put in a line stroke width of 2 and a point size for the 5. Click Save. Our line chart's formatting changes to have curved lines. The lines are a little thicker, and the points for each month are larger to help them pop out more visually. We can change it over to year. Okay, so one common question, and yes, we did choose quarter year on this one. So one common question on line charts. So this is something we're working on with the product, but we have not quite gotten to yet. In this case, you're seeing that that 2017 is showing up a whole bunch of times. So is 2018, so is 2019. To fix this, if we go to Configuration, Report Properties, and Formatting again, and we use the setting Force Ticks, it'll go ahead and clean that up. The problem with that setting is if you have enough data points, it can cause problems with rendering the x-axis right now. We are working to get that fixed, but this is always something to help you work around that if necessary. We could go ahead and change this back to month year. And here, we can actually just go ahead and put a trend line at the year level. And there we see that trend line shown. And yes, Force Ticks, it'll work for any aggregation level. So the question was, will Force Ticks work fix the quarter year view? And the answer is yes, it will. For the trend line, we can also we can set a dash length and a dash gap. So if we go ahead and say 4 pixels for the dash length and 2 pixels for the gap, it updates accordingly. Let's see, we can change over to an area chart. Change it back over to quarter year, and it looks a little better there. All right. Let's see, scatter charts. So for a scatter chart, you'll need to define, there's a few different fields you need to define to create a scatter chart. We'll go ahead and do choose grouping. And what we're going to do with the scatter is show 1 point per deal. So in this case, we're looking at each individual deal. Again, to give some context, you might do a scatter chart per project in your project management system. You might do per ticket in your support system. You'll need to define 2 measures, one for the x-axis, one for the y-axis. So in this case, we'll go ahead and do deal size and quantity. So now we're seeing a point for each deal in our data. We're seeing the deal size across the x-axis, and we're seeing the quantity across the y-axis. We can choose grouping for the point category, do sales rep, and it breaks them out. So we're seeing the coloring for Amy's, for Anna's, for Jim's, so on. If we do choose measure again and do probability, then it becomes more of a bubble chart with the highest, so 100% probability deals are showing with the largest bubbles, and 0% are showing with the smallest. Some of the options for customizing the formatting of a scatter chart. So this upper left quadrant here, this is deals that have high quantity and low value. If we want to make that more apparent to the end user, we can go to the upper left label, say high quantity, low value, scroll down and click save, and it shows up there, just to again make it a little more clear to the end user. We can turn off the display of the grid altogether. And we can set to show the labels without having to mouse over. So the question is, in this example, what does quantity represent? And the answer is the quantity is the number of items in this deal. Okay, moving on. So that we have 3 different gauge type reports. Up until pretty recently, these were actually all just one report type, but for clarity's sake, we've split them out into dial, speedometer, and circular. So if we go ahead and do speedometer, we'll do choose measure. And there we see deal size shown on a speedometer type gauge. If we go to our familiar formatting tab again, we can choose an explicit max value. So we'll say that $500,000 is the max that we're going for with this gauge. We can also set up alert points. So we could say that 150,000 and 300,000 will be our alert points. Updates accordingly. You can customize these colors. So if you want to show, so right now we have that, but let's say we want to go a little brighter. Updates accordingly. If we do a dial, the same kind of thing. These can be especially useful when you're putting together multiple gauges on a dashboard. So especially if you're showing, for support, if you're showing SLA percentage by group. So have a gauge for each group's SLA percentage. For projects, having an on-time percentage by team. Examples like that. Bullet charts, again, pretty similar. They use a lot of the same underlying settings as gauges, but the bullet's going to show you just kind of this horizontal line with the same sort of alert point coloring. One additional setting you can toggle for these is if you can turn on gradient and display that value as a gradient as opposed to fixed values. Let's see. Unfortunately, we are using sales data in this case, so Gantt is not going to be the best example. There's a question that's actually a very good one, that right back around the gauges and bullets. Can the max value refer to a number stored in a field? And the answer is yes. So there is max value measure. The same thing is there for alert points. So you can choose a value. You can have a measure field feed in with, say, a goal value for the max value for the alert measures. So again, unfortunately, since the CRM data doesn't lend itself to a Gantt all that well, but I do want to cover that at least a little for all the people who are using Easy Insight for project management. So if we do, let's see, let's do, so the Gantt is going to show you the duration from start date to end date for, in this case, the deal title. So it's from when the deal was created to when it was won. Obviously, this is much more of a task-oriented report normally. So you usually use something like task start date and task end date. If you do choose measure, you can include a measure with the report. So you're able to kind of see the roll up and drill down of those values on the Gantt. And you can also add in coloring on it. So in this case, oops, let's do, so as we open it, we can get some colors on the Gantt chart to go along with each row of the Gantt. By default, the Gantt chart generates a filter which runs for this year. So this filter kind of does some specialized logic for the Gantt chart, because so that if say you have a task that had a start date of December 2019 and runs through to March of 2020, this filter will handle the logic necessary to capture that task, even though the start date was in a previous year. For the legend showing the colors in this case, it's just going to do alphanumeric. So sorry, the question was, how are the color values sorted at right? And the answer in this case is they're just, with the Gantt chart in this case, they're sorted alphanumerically. All right, moving on. Trend reports. So a trend report gives you by default kind of a big number display of a value. So here we're seeing our total deal size this is especially nice kind of on like an overview page on a dashboard, just giving like a top level, high, 10,000 foot view number. What you can do with this is also set up trend comparison. So you'll see we have a link here that is set up trend filters. We click on this and we get a now rolling filter dropdown and a previous rolling filter dropdown. So we'll go ahead and compare our sales for last year to the previous full year. There's one more thing we have to do here. We have to tell it what date field it's using for that trend comparison. So we'll click on select trend date next to deal size, and we'll say we want to compare based on when the deal was won. We rerun the report, and it shows us that we had $80,000 won last year, which was a 52% increase from the previous full year. If we add in opportunity count, it defaults again to just showing with no comparison. But if we want to compare by a different field, so let's say date created, so now we see that we had 28 opportunities created last year, which was a 32% decline from the previous year. So it's important to note that we're using two different date fields here. We're using date one for the deal size and date created for the opportunity count. Let's see, especially for trends, there are some additional settings here that can be useful. So if we do year to date, by default, year to date compared to prior full year is going to show a decline because this year is nowhere near complete. if we do last year to current day, well, in this case, I guess we still have a decline, but it's going to compare this year up till now with last year up to the current day of the year. If we change this report type into a trend grid, we can go ahead and add sales rep. So now what we're seeing is the percent change by sales rep. You can add additional measures, you can add additional groupings, kind of just a different way to visualize this data. All right. Okay. So form reports, this is one that's a bit of a little bit more of a specialized case. Typically, you'll want to use a form report in a context of a drill through, something you're kind of clicking into from another report. So in this case, it's showing us Lisa 70,638. The trick here is there's probably multiple sales reps. So really you'll want to have some sort of filter that is paring it down to that user. But this can be very useful to have in and we'll be covering this more in a future webinar, but especially if you're drilling through into a dashboard, something like that, a form report can be very useful. Okay, maps. So we have three different types of maps: shape maps, heat maps, and point maps. So for a shape map, if we go ahead and do state, let's see. So what that's going to show is, in this case, we're looking at our customer count by state. As you mouse over, the value will show up there. You can customize with several different options. You can choose US or world maps. You can customize the colors. You can use logarithmic shading. And you can turn off the controls, which will get rid of the ability to zoom in and out, to move around, things like that. Go ahead and do a heat map. So for a heat map, we have to choose whether we're using latitude and longitude or postal/zip code. So if we do have latitude and longitude data, okay, usual heat map, but provides you with the ability to kind of see in intensity where your leads are, and things like that. A point map is going to work in the same general way. Again, you're going to need to use either latitude and longitude or postal zip code. But it gives you a kind of a rendering of each point. As you zoom in, it expands out up to the point where there's only a single value shown. Let's see, calendar reports. So for a calendar report, you'll need to choose a start date, an end date, a title field, and optionally a color field. So in this case, we're just looking at deals as they go between their creation date and the date they were won, with coloring based on the sales rep. Again, this is one that's probably better for project management or support. So for project management, looking at milestones, project durations, tasks. For support, looking at tickets, which ones have been open across different time periods. Tree maps. Start fresh here. So a tree map is again going to have a hierarchy like we had with trees. So if we go ahead and do deal status, current stage, and deal size, probably not the most interesting in this case. Let's go ahead and try those. Let's do sales rep. So in this case, we're seeing Lisa and her deals by stage, Jim and his by stage, Anna and hers by stage. So we had a question back around the maps. Is it possible to create a legend with these maps? Not at the moment. However, that is in the list of future enhancements that we're planning to make. Let's see. Board reports. So this is what we'll get into more when we do a future webinar on two-way connections, because this is where these are more useful. But if we go ahead and have stage, title, we can go ahead and add in custom fields. So, kind of your typical Kanban type view. Again, we'll get into this one more on a future call. We do have a question. Will you be showing how to create a dashboard in this webinar? We only have 10 minutes left, unfortunately. So this one we're going to stay just kind of focused on report creation, but we'll definitely be doing a future webinar on dashboard creation. We're going to be trying to do a webinar probably every 2 weeks. So hopefully we can steadily work through a wide variety of topics as we do those. All right, month over month. So this one, we'll need to choose a date. And then this one typically is one if you have a variety of different measures that you want to look at. So let's say we pull in one amount, pending, or let's see, one count, lost amount, lost count, change it over to year. So being able to look at a variety of different measures grouped up at different levels. So, just different options here. Compare years is similar. So in this case, it's showing us 2017, 2018, 2019, and it's showing it as well as 2020. And for the last two years, it shows you the percentage change between those years. So there are a few other report types, but I think we've kind of covered the vast majority of what you'll probably be using. We have a little time left here, so let's just kind of go with questions for the last 8 minutes. So we have a question, is there a way to do a week over week sort of report? So month over month will be the way to go, just with a week level of aggregation. Let's see. Feel free to chime in with any more questions. So we did show the point map. So the question was, did we show the point map? We did. The point map was this one. So this was the point map. So again, feel free to chime in with some questions. I'll just kind of cover a few other quick things in the report editor. One setting that can be very useful, especially if you have a lot of data, is this one under quick actions. Toggle run report manually. So if you toggle this setting, as you add fields to your report, the report won't actually run until you're ready. So there I've added a few fields. I click run the report, and there it runs. So, not much of a difference in this case, but especially once you get into things where you have, hundreds of thousands, millions, even more rows than that, this can really save your time as opposed to it running every single time you make a change to the report. Let's see, what else can we cover here? If we jump back to the date side, we saw that we had these different default date levels. If you do edit this field, you'll see that there's also additional options found here. So there we have things like quarter, just a fixed quarter of the year, fixed month. So if we say quarter, what that's going to show us is just straight Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, as opposed to Q1 2018, Q1 2019, etc. This can be very useful, especially when you're doing seasonality type reporting. Let's see, we have 5 minutes left here. So there's a question, how is that different than defining the date format manually? It is similar, but this is going to make sure that the data is aggregated at that appropriate level. So the date format is still going to, if the data is still being, the data is going to be split out at whatever date level you set here. The formatting is separate from however it's being split out. So you can think of like the formatting is cosmetic. That's what's being shown in terms of display. I'll show one other thing that's kind of useful. So once you save a report, and then if we go ahead and, so let's say we change this to quarter year, we save again. There is version history under configuration. If we want to restore a previous revision of the report, we can go here, we click, and it restores back to the original version. So especially if you make a change that you want to undo, this is kind of a great way to go back to those previous versions of the report. Limits. This is where you're able to set a maximum number of things displayed. So especially for charts or a list report, only show me the top 5. The limits window provides this. There's a question, do you lose the versions in between, or can you still access them? The version that sticks around as long as your account sticks around, basically. So you might have 50 different revisions over the course of a couple of years, and you can always go back to any of those versions. All right, we have 3 minutes left. So any other questions? So future webinars, we'll be covering dashboards, custom field creation, filtering, data integration, two-way connections, setting up personas and data level security, anything else you can think of to cover in a future webinar. We're going to be trying to do a lot of these to help everybody get a better understanding of Easy Insight and make sure they're able to get the most out of it. see. And then I probably should have covered this as well, but just to be on the, just in case you were very new to Easy Insight, with saving a report, you do have the save button up here in the upper left. Once you save a report from your data source, it's here under main views. You can click on the edit link next to the report to jump back to it again. And you can do save a copy. To save a copy of that report. All right. I think we're probably going to wrap it up if there aren't any other questions around report building. Thank you for attending this webinar. We hope it's been helpful. If you have any feedback at all, please let us know. As mentioned, we'll be sharing the recording of this webinar. We'll be emailing that out. And again, if you have any further webinars you'd like to see, we'd love to hear from you. So thanks for your time and hope you have a wonderful day.